Let's go. Welcome back. It's another episode of the Wobcast 2.0, episode 18 of season 1, the final episode of season 1 of the Wobcast 2.0. A giant disappointment as the Minnesota Vikings fall 31-24 in the wildcard round of the playoffs. A disappointing end to what was a very exciting season, and we're here to talk about it. It's your host, Mike Wobschall, Wobby, with Giles, with Chase, here to be your therapeutic resource to get you over this Vikings loss, which, as we said, was very disappointing. But there's an exciting offseason ahead, and the future is bright for your Minnesota Vikings heading into the 2023 offseason and eventually the season. So let's begin talking about all of that. We got to digest this loss to the Giants, and we got to look ahead to next season. So Giles and Chase, welcome in. I understand and expect that you're disappointed. I'm excited to talk through this game because there's a few points that I really want to hit on and get your thoughts on. But generally speaking, how we doing? You guys all right?
We're doing all right. It was definitely a disappointing loss. I was hoping and had higher aspirations for the season once the season got going. Definitely did a lot better in a lot of categories than I was expecting when you look back at the beginning of the season, but definitely not where we wanted to end. But I do believe there's a lot of great things to look at our team when we go into next season. I think some national spotlights think we're a one and done. We're going to be the Cardinals of last year, where we had a great season the season before and we collapse. I don't predict that for the Vikings. I think there's a lot of great core pieces that we can build around. There's definitely some pieces to fix. I try to remove a lot of emotion from these things. When you look at this team from a logical perspective, there's a lot of things to like.
Yeah.
How about you, Jason?
We could be in a lot worse position right now. I think everyone's kind of claiming that Vikings are going to rebuild and Detroit's going to run the division. I don't know. I think we're in a lot better position than people say we are. So I'm excited. I'm hopeful for sure.
Interesting, Chase, and we'll talk more about this in this show, but definitely in later shows. Detroit, I think, is something to talk about, guys. Yeah, like
they got it going on. They're looking good at a lot of positions.
I don't know if they weren't the best team in the division.
According to their official social medias, they are the best team in the division, and they're entering the offseason as the best team in the division.
All right. So, well, I don't know if they should maybe go that far and talk about themselves in that way, but
neither do I.
Yeah, we have a better coach.
Let's not get on this tangent.
You've been here before.
But, they scored the same amount of points as the Vikings this year.
They did very well offensively.
Yeah, so
with Jared Goff, mind you.
Right.
The guy Kirk Cousins.
Right. So we'll talk about that later. Let's not get into that. We need to talk about this loss to the New York Giants, and we're going to do that today. A familiar script with an unfamiliar ending. So we'll talk about that. Also, though, later in the show, we'll do an off-season preview for the Minnesota Vikings. Quickly hit on what we think are going to be the main talkers and briefly preview those. We'll also preview what's to come in the Wobcast 2.0 here in season 2, and most notably in the offseason, what you can expect from us. And then very quickly, we will preview the divisional round of the playoffs and get some predictions. All right, guys, a familiar script for the Minnesota Vikings. And what I mean by that is not a crushing playoff disappointment, although that is all too familiar for us. But this specific game and the way it flowed, guys, as I was watching it, I'm like, this is what they've been all season, right? Start fast, the game evens out, and then you get into crunch time and it's really close. And the only difference was the magic wasn't there. There was no double doink field goal. There was no quarterback sneak fumble in the end zone, miraculous Justin Jefferson catch, 70-yard Dalvin Cook touchdown. There was no crushing coaching mistake by the other team. There was no Greg Joseph 62-yard. Like that magical play was not there. That was the only difference. Yep. And therefore, the Vikings did not come out on top of a one-score game. And that happened for the first time all season. And so I know this is a very familiar feeling for Vikings fans. It cuts open a wound. It scrapes open a scab. And so obviously very awful timing. Mm-hmm. And I want to give you guys a chance to sort of opine, whether in general or on something specific. But before I do, I just want to make one comment on, how about the vitriol for the Vikings defense, from fans and from other folks, media. and Ed Donatel. And the thing that really I think needs to be said is, what did you expect? Because what we saw from the defense is what they were all year. So why are we offended by what happened on defense in the Giants game? That's what really kind of makes me shake my head at the reaction to this game. Is I understand that you're very disappointed that they gave up 31 points to the Giants and that they lost in the first round. But like, to me, it's more, I'm a little bit shifting my focus a little bit more on offense, because I'm kind of like, you only scored 24 points. They didn't play well enough to win on offense. They really didn't. If you would have said to me before the game started, take it or leave it, Vikings score 24, I'd say I'm leaving that. They need more than that. So I'm not going to absolve Ed Donatel and the defense from all the blame in this loss, Giles, but that's what I expected. I mean, this is what they were all year. So I kind of don't know why people are offended about what they saw on defense in this game.
I do think they played a little bit poorer than they typically did, but I completely agree with you. I did not go into that game expecting them to play well. I expected us to have to outscore the other team, not us defending anything else. I do think this was the worst game the entire season for the defense. With that being said, I think there's a very little variance in that. Although it is the worst, it's not like by a wide margin necessarily. They were a bad defense this year. All things included, they were a bad defense. That's not meant to be negative. It's just highlighting that was a weakness on our team that caused a lot of deficiencies. And I think you are correct. I think it does need to be far more focused on the offense not scoring enough points. I think there were a few... we'll call them snafus. That makes it sound more like we're trying to misplace blame, but I think they had a major problem with dropping, as they've had all season. Honestly,
I was just going to say that, Giles. You've talked about this many times this season. Yep.
I think come off season, when it comes to training camp, they need to figure that out. That's just something that you can't have. There were a lot of key moments throughout this game where it was 3rd and long, or it was even 4th and long, and drops prevented us from moving the chains. There was one, I guess, where Christian Darrisaw had a false start. But aside from that, drops were a big issue. So we need to be able to shore that up. There was one play where it was either on 3rd or 4th down where Kevin O'Connell tried to call a timeout because he recognized it was not the right look, and the refs did not grant it to him. And typically that's supposed to call a play dead, right? Yeah. And I actually viewed that as a big pivotal moment. And I think Kevin O'Connell was pretty angry about it as well, recognizing as well that it was a pivotal moment. I don't want to blame the loss on that necessarily, but there were some things that did not go to plan. And when you have enough things that don't go not to plan, you're going to lose the game. And that's what happened.
Yep. How about and we can get into PFF grades too here, Giles, if you want to get some of that data ready. 4th and 8, a 3-yard catch. Everyone talked about that. I think we should sort of work our way through that and talk about it as well. I think, though, the play before that was as big.
With KJ Osborne.
Yep. And I don't think KJ should have caught that. I won't say he should have caught that. I think that was catchable. Nice play by the defender. It wasn't an inaccurate pass per se, but it was not perfectly placed. Cousins said after the game, if I could have one back, it would be that one. Not the 4th and 8 3-yard play. It would be the one to KJ. And when I watched that play and I saw that, I know that we all knew there was one, you had another down, but that was absolutely a dagger. That when that catch wasn't made, I was like, oh, that was it. That was it.
Yep.
That
lost the game probably.
Yeah, that was a drive extender.
Yep.
Because no offense to our dear Minnesota Vikings, but if you would have asked me, stand on what side of the fence you think is going to happen here on this 4th and 8, will the Vikings convert or will the Giants hold? I'd be like, the Giants are going to hold.
Yeah.
Now on 3rd and 8, I would have been like, I think the Vikings will convert this 3rd and 8. Like, I think this is a catch here. Like, I would have bet on a catch, and it didn't happen. I think the play before that was huge.
Yep. Especially when you analyze every close game we've had this season, there's been a catch just like that has occurred and has been successful, that has been able to lead to us being successful with a score. It required at least one of those plays, and all of our one-score games had that play. And when you lost that play, I'm like, oh, we needed that in order to be successful, and obviously
and
we didn't.
KJ Osborne was the artist of some of those catches, and some of them were touchdowns too. Again, I'm not going to pin blame on KJ for not catching it or Cousins for throwing it behind him, because it wasn't behind him. It was basically right on target, but it needed to be out in front of him. And it wasn't. So I think that play was huge. That didn't go in the Vikings' favor. The 4th and 8, the 3-yard catch. I understand why there are routes that are run short of the sticks on 3rd downs and 4th downs, because the defense is obviously guarding the line to gain and beyond. So you have to leave room from time to time for run after the catch opportunity and to pick up a 1st down, even though you caught it short of the sticks. It happens every game.
And to separate defenders, right? Someone's short, someone has to defend him.
I get it.
So,
however, in this spot, I honestly would rather stand on my head, be spun around like a top, and throw a pass behind my back down the field than throw it to Hawkinson in that spot.
Because it's the last play of the game. Even if it gets picked, this is your only opportunity to move the chains.
And I know it's a 1 in 100,000 chance, but I'd rather throw a pick there because maybe there's a fumble on the return or whatever, but the only thing you can say that is I was going to get sacked, so I had to dump it off to someone. It's at least it was a catch. The guy could have face masked you, or it could have been a late hit, could have got an automatic first down, something like that. But honestly, in that instance, I rather would have had Cousins close his eyes and throw it behind his back past the sticks than that.
Because everyone was covered in that play, but I think you're absolutely correct. You just got to give it a go. Now, I was thinking about this after the play and after the game ended. If you analyze the rest of the season, there were a lot of contexts in which Kevin O'Connell removed the hot route, especially at the beginning of the year. There were very little hot routes in any of his plays, and people were like, finally, he's forcing Kirk not to check it down. But I think one important thing to call out in terms of difference is that we didn't have Brian O'Neill. And now, this is me speculating, but makes me wonder if Kevin O'Connell adjusted his play calling based on the fact that we didn't have a show-stopping right tackle, where he's like, well, we're not going to have enough time to let these normal plays develop, so we got to add a hot route to at least get a completion. Now, obviously that didn't work, but makes me wonder what caused him to add hot routes back in, because we were still being able to be successful with our completions in a lot of contexts without that hot route being a throw short of the sticks, right? When you're getting pressure, you just need to dump it off and make it happen, an easy completion. Those did not really exist in a lot of our play calls, and now he started to add it in. So I don't know if that's the offensive line affecting that and the timing, but something to call out.
Yeah. I don't know either, and I don't know that Kevin would ever offer that insight. Voluntarily, or even if he's asked. Usually when that type of insight gets offered by the coach, it's because he's defending himself or being criticized for the play call. And I think almost no one is criticizing O'Connell for what happened. I think that are almost all criticizing Cousins. But maybe there is something to that. I remember we played at New England in 2018, Cousins' first year, and we were coming back in the second half, and it was 4th and 11 or something like that, and Cousins threw a quick slant, for a 4-yard gain, and I'm like, that was the right read and the right throw, unless it's 4th down in the 4th quarter, then it's not right. And I'm like, come on, he's a computer, man. He is a computer. He spits out the right answer every single time, but that's not what you didn't need a computer in that moment. You needed someone to improvise, and. Look, Justin Jefferson was covered on a lot of his receptions this year. I don't know why him being covered on 4th and 8 with the season on the line dissuaded you from throwing it to him.
He actually led the league in both contested catches and targets by a very wide margin.
The miracle catch in Buffalo, man, he was covered by 3 people.
And had a hand on it.
So very disappointing to see that. And I just, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh boy, here comes the Cousins fire. Holy cow, is this going to be bad? And
he is what he did the exact thing people have hated on him for a long time.
And you know what? Other people came to his defense and said he had a great game, didn't throw a pick, accurate, high completion percentage, whatever. And that's all true. I don't think they challenged the Giants deep very often. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you got PFF data about 10 plus yard throws, but I didn't think they challenged them deep. And
There was only a single target. A single target. That was all. It was a
really,
non-completion. I forget
so
who it was, but
that
yeah.
doesn't surprise me, Giles. I'm like, they are not challenging these guys deep. And I didn't, I know Jefferson had 9 targets, but I think he averaged 12 on the season. And a 9 is not enough at all. And I get it. They're trying to guard him, but people are trying to guard him all year. And he still got 12 targets a game. What do you have? 60 yards, something like that. You know, I mean,
yeah, very, very low.
And I know Hawkinson popped off a little bit, and you know, we could talk about that later in this show or in future episodes. What a great trade, and what a complete stud and perfect fit in this offense. And he had a great game, but I mean, he needs to be the complement, not the main guy. And he was the main guy against the Giants, and that's not going to get you very far.
Correct. I completely agree. And sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
One additional thing that I wanted to get your take on, because you both know him and you are a little bit more of a football expert than I am. How much do you think the Giants' defensive line coach played an impact in this game? And for most people, they may not necessarily know who that is. It was our former co-defensive coordinator. Yeah. Does he play a role in this in terms of knowing our players and trying to exploit that knowledge?
Yes. For sure.
Andre Patterson, he knew what to do, and he stuck it to us.
I think so. And where Andre lost that edge was when the offensive scheme changed with O'Connell coming over. Of course, Andre is familiar with the scheme, but he loses an edge a little bit there because schematically he didn't know exactly what was coming, but he knows the strengths and weaknesses of individual players who were there when he was there. Right. And that goes for both on the offensive line, but also on the defensive line. Yeah. But specifically to the Vikings offense, yes, I do think there was an advantage there. He knew the pressure points of Bradbury, even of a guy like Dalvin Cook, right? Yep. Like he knows the pressure points. What they're going to try. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's not why the game turned out the way it turned out, but that's the game within the game there. Now, every year going forward, Patterson's edge there diminishes exponentially, right? But I mean, this was fresh. This was last year, so it's good call out there. Yep. The last one I had here was Zadarius Smith. Man, where did he go? Yeah. Maybe you're gonna tell me his PFF grade was outstanding or something against the Giants, but I have a feeling it wasn't. And we talked the week before the game where I was like, the Vikings, they couldn't turn their defense around in time. So now they just got to find a hook on which to hang their hat. Just one thing. And I said, it's got to be edge pressure with Smith and Hunter, and they couldn't do it. And I'm thinking back to the last month or so, and I just don't know where he went. Maybe he's playing hurt. I have no idea. Maybe teams figured out how to stop him. I don't know, Giles. But I mean, turn the searchlight on. Send a search party out, man. Where was he?
Yep. We will get into the PFF grades. I think that'll be interesting. I want you to guess them. Do you want to head into that segment now?
Yeah, let's do that. All
right. Do you want to start with offense or defense?
Let's guess the grades.
You want to start with offense or defense?
Start on defense. Yep.
Start on defense. All right. Who do you think the top 3 players were? Period. Well, actually, before I say that, do you want me to segment this by limited snaps or for everybody on the team?
I have the snap counts. So,
okay.
I want there to be a qualifying snap number though.
Okay. So what do you want that to be?
10. Is that fair?
Okay. Yep. Fair enough. All right. Let's do it. So tell me the top 3 players. Who do you think did well? Who didn't?
This is hard. I'm ready to go on who I think didn't do well.
Okay.
So, but let's get to that afterwards. Let's go to who actually maybe showed up a little bit. And I saw Tomlinson make some plays, so he's my first guess.
Nope, he was middle of the road. He played all right. He ended the game with a 66.5 grade. He did horrible in tackling. He missed some really big tackles. That really dinged his score. Otherwise, he had a pretty good game other than he missed some major tackles. But
all right. And then I'm staying on the interior with Bullard and Lynch because I don't like anyone in the second level or third level. So I'll say Bullard and Lynch also in there.
Bullard is not in the top. He was the 6th overall graded player with a 76 or a 67.3 grade.
Okay.
And you said which one?
Lynch.
Sorry.
I was
Lynch?
oscillating between Lynch and Tonga, and I went with Lynch.
He had a horrible day in the run game and ended the day with a 60.8 grade. So he's not also in the top.
Yeah. Okay. Who were our top performers?
The number 1 overall graded player ended the day with a 90.0, which for the people that look at it, that's an elite level play. He had amazing day in pass rush. Little suspect in run defense. He might even been higher, but ended the day with a 90 grade, and that's Patrick Jones the second.
Wow, good for him. 13 snaps.
Yeah. 13 snaps, exactly. So that's number 1. Number 2, ironically, is none other than Zadarius Smith with a 77.3 grade. Okay. Now, I think it's important to note that I think other areas of the game, without revealing too much, affected his ability to get home, and that maybe led to your kind of perspective of him, where football is a very integrated game. From a process standpoint, he did pretty well. He had two pressures, I believe. Didn't have any sacks. Had an assist sack, maybe, I think. But ultimately, he had an okay day. He ended the day with a 77.3 grade.
Okay, so maybe I should be a little more measured in my criticism of him.
You're
However,
right. I get it.
My opinion stands where I think he was less effective later in the season than he was early.
Yep.
All right. So
I think that's also an important thing to note, that PFF is a measure mostly of process. It does measure results too. That's not incorporated, but I think it heavily incentivizes the process side of the fence. Okay. And process-wise, he was fairly sound. With that being said, football is a results-driven business, so I think what you're saying should definitely not go unnoticed, because at the end of the day, we lost the game, and part of that was because we didn't get home enough. Yeah. So I think it's important to note that. And following closely behind Zadarius Smith is his counterpart, Danielle Hunter. And had a 76.5 grade. He had some pretty severe missed tackles that caused him to drop, but otherwise he was elite. In pass rush, he had an 80 grade, but in tackling, he had a 31.1 grade, which is abysmal. So unfortunate. And then to give a quick shout out, Duke Shelley was slightly behind that. Once again, Mr. Shelley Island ended the day with a 72.9 grade. So I think we might have found ourselves a pretty decent corner if we can get him re-signed.
Agreed.
But if we want to transition down to the end of the list, who are the 3 worst players? And there's definitely a big list that you could try to pull from.
I
should say our outside linebacker group, for the most part, was the only group that did well process-wise. The rest were not great. Yeah. This is the most yellow and red I've seen on our defense this season.
So I really didn't like much on defense at all. Mm-mm. I didn't like how Chandon Sullivan played. I did not like at all how Eric Kendricks played. And I want to go somewhere in the secondary again here on my third one. So, I think Peterson was okay, so I don't want to call him out. But I really was down on how Sullivan and Kendricks looked.
Sullivan was the 4th worst player. He ended the day with a 58 grade. Did horrible in the run game. Coverage was bad. Pass rush was bad. He did not have a great day. Eric Kendricks was the 2nd worst player. He ended the day with a 52 grade. Did horrible in every category. And the worst overall graded player was none other than Patrick Peterson. He had a horrible game. He ended the day with a 46.7 grade. He did pretty okay in the tackling game, but other than that, it was a rough day for him, which is unfortunate. Because you hate to see that for such a veteran player. But ultimately, I think when you think about the great process from our 2 starting middle linebacker or outside linebackers, the rest of the team from the front defensive line to our secondary, that really caused them to not be able to actually have production. Yeah. So that really stunk.
I didn't think the coverage was good at all. I thought there was a lot of open Giants receivers, and I don't know if we want to pin that on scheme or poor playing or both, probably both, but awful, I thought, in coverage. And Kendricks, man, I mean, the guy's been through a lot, and he's been a warrior and a tackling machine for the Vikings, but ouch, man. I mean, I'm watching that game, and I'm thinking, I know there's no next game for the Vikings, but if that was a regular season game, or if the Vikings happened to win that game, whoever they played, which would have been San Francisco in this instance, their game plan is like, well, how do we expose 54? I mean, we want to get 54 involved in this game and put him in position to make plays, because he won't make them. And I think Kendricks is a smart player. I think he knows where to go. I think he's having a hard time getting there in time.
Yeah, especially in this scheme. This scheme requires a significantly fast middle linebacker. Like that is the one of the bigger precipice behind our entire scheme. And right now we have two slow middle linebackers. They're great, very smart players. They're great tacklers. They're ones that can really call out what an offense is going to do. But if you're not fast enough, like it's tough to get anything done. And especially in our scheme, it requires you to be even faster than even in a 4-3.
Yep. And I don't want to go over the top here from the top rope on Kendricks, but it's of note, because I think what happens with him is an off-season talker. Like, big salary, big role on the defense, getting up there in age, and you got to be fast in this day and age. I mean, you've always had to be fast in the NFL, but I mean, you don't want to be slow with these offenses that people are concocting, and I mean, the players that are out there running around. I mean, you can't be slow. And he is slowing down. He is slowing down, man.
Which is always unfortunate, because you're rooting for him. He's been a phenomenal player. He's a Ring of Honor guy for the Minnesota Vikings, but I think he's reached his shelf with the Vikings.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. Any other PFF things of note here to close the Giants game or close the season?
No, I think that's it. I mean, just a last final general element. I think we have a lot of rookies that show some real promise for the next upcoming season. Duke Shelley, one. Josh Metellus, he's another one I'm really rooting for him.
I'm a big Metellus guy. Yep.
Yeah, Metellus, I hope he's a starter for our secondary next year. I'm really, really high on him. I think Kairos Tonga, he's been doing pretty well. He's had a few suspect games in a couple categories, but other than that, he's been a great player considering his draft status. So I think we have some interesting players to play around with for this next season.
Metellus, before we go to offense and close the season PFF-wise on offense, Metellus has, to me, some Andrew Sendejo, Hussein Abdullah vibes of cut your teeth on special teams as a safety and then eventually become good enough to play on defense. That's Metellus right there. He's in line with those guys. Yep.
And this season, he's been our highest graded safety.
Oh, really? Is that right?
Yeah, and he's the lowest paid.
Okay. Well, I mean, let's see. I don't know if he's one of the free agents coming up. I don't think he is. No, I don't have him on my list. So that's good. I won't be surprised if he's playing a bunch on defense next year. I think he should. So, all right, let's go offense.
All righty. Who do you think played the best? Give me the top three.
Put Hawkinson up there for sure.
Yep.
I might put Cousins up there too. After that, I don't really like much. I don't think we were good. I'll put I think Darisaw. I don't think we were good at right tackle, and I don't think we were good on the interior. So I'm going Darisaw, Hawkinson, Cousins.
Yep. Darisaw was the fourth graded player at a 74.7, so he did very, very well. Did even better in pass protection than in run blocking, and he had a 78 grade in run blocking. So he is proving continuously that he's an amazing player and definitely the cornerstone of our offensive line. You were right with TJ Hawkinson. He was our number one overall graded player with a 90.6.
Stud. Yep.
Absolute stud. He did great in every single category. Second is in the same position with Johnny Munt with an 83 grade. He had 21 snaps, so he did pretty well in all phases, pass, run, and pass catching as well. And then the third best player was Kirk Cousins. He ended the day with the 83.5 grade. Which, unfortunately, when it mattered most, he did not necessarily do what we wanted him to do. But I saw a stat that we're the only team in NFL history to end a playoff game with more than an 80% completion percentage, no turnovers, and still lose the game, which is unfortunate. Which, I mean, the two biggest indictments are the defense and Kirk Cousins checking it down on fourth down. Equally as important. So unfortunate that we have to make history that way, but that's what it is.
Yep.
So if you translate that down to the worst players, talk to me. Who do you think had the worst days on Sunday? Man.
I hate to do it, but I'm going to put my man AT19 in there. Although maybe he didn't look good because he wasn't, I don't know, maybe he wasn't targeted as much as we think he should be, but I'm putting him in there.
Yep.
I didn't like what I saw there. And then I got to go interior for sure here. So I'm going to go with Ingram and Udo.
Okay. Thankfully, Adam was about middle of the road. He had a horrible day in run blocking. Ed Ingram was the fourth worst player. He ended the day with a 57.6 grade. He continues to be horrible in pass protection. He ended the day with a 28.9 grade, which is that's worse than bad. Like that's worse than abysmal. Like that's really bad. And I'm a guy that's rooting for Ed Ingram because I think he came out from LSU as a great guard in a lot of categories, but he continues to make rookie mistakes to the point where I'm interested to see if they continue on with him or if they try to find a replacement. I know he's a second-round pick, but at the end of the day, if you continue on with Kirk Cousins, protection has to be a priority. And right now, he is making some severe mistakes. But ultimately, from the worst, you were close on the interior offensive line. It was Garrett Bradbury. I think Mr. Andre Patterson knew how to attack Garrett Bradbury, and he did so. He ended the day with a 28 grade. He did even worse than Ed Ingram in pass protection.
Worse than the guy who did worse than bad.
Yep.
Thanks.
They're just not great. And if you would have told me that we would have had this close of a game with that bad of pass protection on the interior, I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Because
we're lucky.
But seriously, because Kirk Cousins is a lot of things, and one of those is he needs to protect. He needs to be protected, and he was not so on the interior side of the offensive line. The second worst player, unfortunately, was CJ Ham. I think he might be a casualty this next year. Okay. I love CJ Ham. He's an awesome guy on and off the field. Probably one of the best, if not the best, fullback in the league, besides maybe what the 49ers bring. But I think he is slowly getting his way off the team, considering his cap hit next year as well. But he ended the day with a 56.6 grade. And the third overall graded player, or worst graded player, is Irv Smith Jr., Mr. Really? Drop over there. He's had severe drop issues, which is unfortunate, but I think he is working himself into a very small contract, not on the Vikings.
Yep, he is. You're right about that. Plus, the best ability is availability, right?
Yeah.
And that's an issue for Irv also.
And when he's on the field, he makes severe drops.
Yeah. We got to do a drop study, Giles. You've talked about drops all year long. We got to look at that and factor that into draft eval and free agent eval. And
yep. I definitely got those analysis coming up for these next seasons.
Okay, good. All right, good. All right, so let's talk about the consequences of this loss. I think it's key to not blur the line on the consequences, because we're going to talk about some things here in this segment that we would have talked about had they won the Super Bowl. But let's talk about some things maybe that we're talking about right now because of what happened against the Giants. So we'll begin with those. Defensively, Ed Donatel gets fired. I think if they throw a stellar game on defense and win and go to San Francisco and lose a close game, I don't know that he gets fired. I think that there is a chance that he got fired because of the Giants game. Granted, it wasn't a great body of work overall, but the value of having continuity is such that if you end on a high note, you might take a chance and keep them.
Yeah.
The opposite happened. You ended on a low note. As you said, Giles, maybe their worst game of the season, the most important game of the season. Poor timing. Donatel fired. Kendricks gets exposed in this game, I do believe, and I think that was probably happening regularly during the season, but it was obvious to people, I think, who aren't keen observers of the game beyond what they see with the football. Like, they just follow the football around the screen. Yep. Even if that's all you do, I think you saw 54 was slow. Yep. So I think that was a this game thing, though. Especially, I think it hurt them because the Giants are a very horizontal offense. They are trying to stretch you out with zone reads and read options and Daniel Jones scrambling and running and Saquon Barkley's agility. They are trying to horizontally challenge you. Yep. That killed Kendricks. Yep. The Cousins stigma. The Cousins stigma comes back because of this game. And the Vikings draft position was set because they lost in this game. They are in the 24th position. but they will pick 23rd in the first round because the Dolphins are forfeiting their first round pick and they are ahead of the Vikings in draft order. Yep. So of those consequences from this loss, Giles, what do you want to drill down on? Donatel being fired, what happens with Kendricks, Cousins stigma, and the draft position being 23 in the first round?
Well, I think there's so much to unpack with the defense that we could maybe turn that into an entire episode next week. So let's start with draft status and work our way backward.
All right. So I saw a tweet from my friend Paul Charchian, who you are familiar with, and many listeners are. If they are not, he is what you would call the godfather of fantasy football, and he's from right around here. He's one of us here in Minnesota. And he talked about some running back from Texas. And I know sounds terrible surface level for me to say some running back from Texas, like I don't know who he is. But honestly, even in my years with the Vikings, like we didn't know some of these players until a few weeks before the combine. So, and that's the truth for the coaches too. Yeah. I'm not even kidding. So there's some running back from Texas, I guess, who's going to go in the first round. And Charch was like, I know you all want to talk about defense, but if this cat, he didn't say cat, he's like, if this guy is on, like he said his name is on the board at 23, that will be interesting. And I about spit out my coffee. I'm like, if they invest a first round pick in a running back, they are nuts. And I don't care if it's Walter Payton.
Yeah.
No.
Not worth it.
No.
Yeah.
You can go offense if you want, but it better be a tackle or a receiver or a center.
Yep.
You should go defense, I think. But anyway, please not a running back.
Not a running back, because you have to apply positional value. I know positional value is a little bit of a gray area conversation, but you do have to understand who is someone you want to get into a second contract and, more importantly, pay, right? And a running back in today's NFL is not the position to pay, right? No. And additionally, when you look at our scheme, unless we change schemes, which I don't see happening, our offense can do without an elite running back.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
If we can have one, great, but we do not require one. Out of all the positions that are required to be great in order for us to score points, running back is not one of them.
No. Look what the Chiefs are doing, and the Bills.
Yep.
And the Eagles. I mean, they don't have elite running backs.
No.
At all.
Not even slight. Yeah.
No.
Yep.
And so the Niners do, and that may be part of why they are where they are, with McCaffrey. But the Niners have been good for years with Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert and Jerick McKinnon,
partially because they prioritize stout offensive lines. The best running backs have amazing offensive lines that are able to set positions for them, right? I mean, you can't have an idiot at that position, but if you have a great offensive line, I'd much rather have that with an average running back than a poor offensive line with an elite one, if that makes sense.
So, all right, let's start high and distill this down and get detailed very quickly on the draft. Let's rule out, fullback, tight end, running back, quarterback at 23. Are we good there?
I would be in agreement with that. I know there's some shows in the Minnesota market that say maybe we should draft a quarterback after that fourth down, but I think we should take that off the table because at bare minimum, Kirk Cousins is going to be with us for another season. I truly think they're going to extend him, if I'm being honest. But I think, agreed. We need to take quarterback off the field.
Quarterback, running back, fullback, tight end are off. So any offensive line position is on the board as a possibility.
I would say,
maybe not left
I don't know
tackle.
if I would do it. I don't know if I'd do a tackle because both of those guys are under contract for a while now.
Okay. So let's take
I would
tackle
do a
off.
guard or center.
Guard or center and wide receiver on offense, right?
Yes.
Those three positions?
Yep.
Guard, center, receiver. And then on defense, I don't think you take anything off the board there. Do you? Yeah. Okay.
No.
So,
no.
So that's kind of where we sit on draft. We're picking 23rd. Hard to get excited about that. Picking 24th and all the rounds thereafter. Very hard to be excited about that. I would say the Vikings are absolutely a team that will consider trading back. Would you agree?
To generate more capital in the second round.
Yep.
I would agree. Unless there's somebody elite at one of those positions at 22 that you got to take, they're going to trade back.
So, I mean, typically you might stumble on like the best center in the draft, like they did with Bradbury one year. You very well might get the best guard in the draft. Or center in the draft. That is possible. It's unlikely you're going to get the best. You're not going to get the best D end. You're not going to get the best receiver. You're not going to get the best corner. Those you're not getting that. So I can see him trading back, but still within the first round, I can see him going back to 31 or 32. So They're definitely a trade back team. They're definitely a team that will take defense, and they're definitely an offensive line team and definitely a wide receiver team. So it's going to be hard, I think, to narrow this down. When we get close to the draft. I don't think we're going to have a stand on the table guy. They're going to get this guy, and I'll bet you, my house on it. It's not going to happen.
I think the only thing that may adjust that is if the Vikings decide they want to adjust their personnel going into next season and trade somebody and then get draft capital back. So, for example, if they trade Danielle Hunter because they don't believe he can really thrive in a 3-4 defense and they get 1 or 2 first-round picks back, and you have 2 first-round picks, then you have one of 2 or 3 possibilities. Either you trade up and you're like, we're going to get the best edge rusher in the draft, or you stay put at both of those, or you trade back, right?
Yeah.
So I think a trade could dramatically change this conversation, but obviously we won't know until then.
Yep, a pre-draft trade. Yep, very true. All right, I think we covered that one. Let's do one more. The 3 choices were Donatello got fired. What's next? Eric Kendricks. What's next with him? Very exposed in the Giants game. And then the Cousins stigma.
Let's talk about, let's talk about Cousins. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's give him a go.
To me, I think we've talked about Cousins, especially early before the season, about how we feel on him. And it's the most consequential position in the sport. Mm-hmm. However, when I look at the Vikings, it's to me not really a talker. Like, I think he's going to be the quarterback. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell you he shouldn't be. Like, I'm not going to join the Kirk Cousins bandwagon and tell you he's going to win a Super Bowl. Just wait. I've seen 10 years of it, and the guy is really good at playing the position, you know, and that's the ceiling, I think.
Yeah.
So the stigma on him is can't win the big game, can't win in prime time. Well, he got rid of that. I mean, he won a bunch of big games this year and he won in prime time. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's the whole, like, if your house is on fire, you don't want to ask him to run in and pull people out, and throwing a 3-yard check down on 4th and 8 is it, man. Like, that's the stigma's still there.
Yep. I think I went into this season loving part of Kirk Cousins' game and hating him. Some people call me a Kirk lover. I call myself a Kirk realist. I understand
think you're
what he's good at.
On it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I love what he's good at and I hate what he's bad at. And until he is not your quarterback, my entire philosophy around the quarterback position is you need to do whatever you can as a GM to put them into a position to succeed. And that formula looks different with Kirk Cousins than you would with someone like Lamar Jackson, right? Now, he's actually going to be a free agent, and I know some people have speculated about trying to go acquiring him, but aside from that major speculation, you need to find a way to make it work with Kirk until he's not your quarterback. Once he's not, then you maybe develop a different recipe. But we know what the recipe is, and anytime I can know what the recipe is, I think you can work with that, because some guys, you don't know exactly what they are because they're so variant. They have really great games and they have really bad games. And I think for the most part, as long as you protect Kirk, he is exactly what you want him to be. Or he is what he is, right? He doesn't have a lot of variance. And I think
I agree. Yep.
If you can go into this season, further improve your offensive line, and more importantly, for the first time in Kirk's entire career, have the exact same play caller 2 seasons in a row. That's never happened before. He's never had a play caller 2 years in a row. And when you look at his psyche and persona, he is Mr. Predictable. He's the guy that will prepare harder than anyone else on the team except for maybe the coach. If you can now build and compound on that preparation and have the same play caller, I actually do believe there may be another level to him. Now, it may not necessarily be a Super Bowl winning level, but I do think he builds on what he has done. And I think building on that, I do put a lot on Kevin O'Connell's shoulders. I think he had some rookie learnings as a head coach. Maybe even in that 4th down play, he should have maybe called something different, knowing Kirk's tendencies, right? Yeah. I know a lot of people call it puppeteering Kirk. I think it's maybe a little too disrespectful, but the point is, I think with a second year under Kevin O'Connell's belt, Kirk Cousins getting a little bit better, I actually do see him taking a step forward, especially if we're able to shore up some of those interior sides of the offensive line.
Agreed on all that. I look at some of these quarterbacks like, Brady and Rodgers. I don't know if Derek Carr is going to enter into this realm right now, but I mean, they're year to year like mercenaries now.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Where they're still good enough to call their own shot, and they're looking for a team that they can go to and win the dang thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's a different stage of a career than the stage that Joe Burrow is in or Jalen Hurts is in, right? Where they're Josh Allen, they're right in the middle of it right now, man. Like, no, this is our team, this is our system. We got to get going. We can have Patrick Mahomes. We can have success for 8 years doing this.
Yep.
Brady, Rodgers, not in that. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, in that. So for Cousins, I don't know. He's in between that. He's still a guy where it's like, we could do this for 5 or 6 years, guys. Come on. Right. But also, if I'm him, I'm like, forget this. Like, you guys can't protect me. You haven't protected me since I got here. I'm going somewhere else where they can protect me. I wonder if that's creeping into his agent's head or into his head, you know, because I'm looking at some of these opportunities, like don't laugh, but like the Jets, like the Raiders, you know, before Russ got there, the Broncos, like where you got a lot of key pieces in place.
Honestly, especially the Jets. They have a great offensive line. I mean, Elijah Vera Tucker is one of the best guards in football. He was there when the Vikings were drafting. We almost got him. But ultimately, I agree. Like, it has to be entering his head because even from the longevity of his career, he took so many hits this year. He was the most hit quarterback in the NFL by a very wide margin. For a statue quarterback, that's a very difficult thing. So if you want to make money over the next X number of years, you got to stay protected. And to be successful with him, you got to be protected. So, yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting thought.
I think he's in the middle there. And I lean more toward, like, get a system going and stay in Minnesota and see if you can fix it and make it right, you know? But because it's like, is Cousins the answer and he needs to be in the right spot? Or is Cousins, like, in a spot that's got it all figured out and they just need a quarterback? I don't know which one the Vikings are.
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, because really, in the Giants game, they only scored 24 points. Now, they were down an offensive tackle, so that can definitely make a hurt. Because, ultimately, we have the best tackle room in the NFL. Hot take. Between your left and right tackles, you are set. And you are set for a while.
How do you do better?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You both have top 10 tackles, period. Yeah. If you loop the tackle position together, both left and right, they're still both top 10. They are both great tackles. So you're building something very interesting if you can bring some more stoutness to the interior. You have a great wide receiver, probably the best in the game. You have arguably a top 5 tight end. Fantastic. Now your running back room is maybe going to get blown up. We'll see. But the point is, I think you have a lot of elements for a great offense, and your defense was abysmal. Now, you can have two different perspectives on that. Are you not able to build a defense because you're paying your quarterback so much, or are you not having a good defense because of scheme or because you didn't draft right? I tend to be of the mind that it's a little bit of both. I think we did not realize our potential considering what type of talent was on the field, but I think they should give it one more go. If I'm giving you my analysis, I think he has the opportunity to win a Super Bowl. I don't think he'll be the reason he wins you a Super Bowl. I don't think he's a Joe Burrow or a Patrick Mahomes, but I think he can be on a team that wins a Super Bowl. I think you have to hit your draft picks right. Don't get me wrong. You have to hit those things. You gotta hit what you're going after in the draft. I think you need to nail free agency. And I think he could be on a Super Bowl winning team. He won't be the exact reason that we do it, but I think he could be on a team. But I think if you can't do it next year, I think then the team starts to deteriorate beyond a point where you can do it, especially given how many guys need to get paid in the next 2-3 years.
It puts the team, if that is the mindset, Giles, and the decision, that puts the team in a very potentially awkward spot in the draft, and a spot the Packers have been before and are currently in, right? With Jordan Love and, you plan for the future and draft your next quarterback, but you piss off your current quarterback, right? So
unless you try to go get someone else in free agency come next offseason. But yeah, I completely agree. Because Justin Jefferson's going to need to get paid, and he's going to be paid quarterback money. Everyone knows it, including him. Tight end with TJ Hawkinson, he's going to need to get extended, and he's going to make some serious coin. You have some pretty major players getting paid, and all the existing players are now ballooning in their payments. Even unless we trade Danielle Hunter, his cap hit skyrockets. Zadarius Smith cap hit skyrockets. We have some very expensive players coming due, and that's hard to do when you also have a really expensive quarterback. Now, I think a lot of people overinflate the idea of the salary cap, saying, well, if you have Kirk, that means you can't win. Like, you can manipulate the cap, and we just happen to have the best cap specialist in the NFL. Rob Brzezinski is a genius, but you can only manipulate it to a point. And I think there's so many great guys that you need to pay. Christian Darrisaw, he's going to break the tackle market in the near future. Brian O'Neill, his cap hit skyrockets in the next 2-3 years. Like, you'll have to make a decision somewhere because you can't pay everybody.
Exactly right. You got to get by at spots with certain guys, and you got to be smart about what spots those are that you're trying to get by. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't pay, it's not smart to pay a running back, an inside linebacker, and a safety, and then try and get by at wide receiver and corner, right? Yeah. Don't do that. Okay. And the Vikings aren't doing that, but you have to get, I remember the 2009 Vikings. I always said, they had great players everywhere. No, they didn't. Almost everywhere they had great players. They had Anthony Herrera at right guard. Okay. Got to get by with a guy like that. You know what I mean? So they had to get by with Ray Edwards at defensive end, and he turned out to be a productive player for that season. But like, you went in there and that was a question mark spot. Like, man, we got McKinney and we got Hutch and we got Winfield and we got Pat and Kevin and Jared Allen and Favre and Harvin and Studs and Peterson, but we got Anthony Herrera and we got Mediu Williams and we got right, like Tyrone Johnson, like whatever.
Your team will have defense or issues.
And like an example of where the Vikings got that figured out was Duke Shelley, right? Like, had a bunch of injuries, had a bunch of cap tied up in other positions. Let's see if this Duke Shelley kid can get us through. Well, he did more than get you through. I mean, I think he earned himself a roster spot next year. So, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, sorry, I'll save it for next week.
Okay, I was just gonna say that, Giles. I was gonna say, you mentioned Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. I have questions on the interior defensive line. I have questions about Harrison Smith. I think Patrick Peterson is out. You got to get more corners, and you're going to get a new defensive coordinator, and it's too much to talk about right now. And we are in fact going to talk about that next week, which leads me to the next segment, which is season 2 of the Wobcast 2.0. We are going to continue with weekly episodes here on the Wobcast 2.0. So the three of us are excited to bring that to all of you guys weekly going forward, but certainly focusing on the tentpole events, the combine, free agency, the draft, the launch of mini camps, and then of course, as news warrants, will come to you as well. We'll do positional breakdowns early in season 2 of the Wobcast 2.0, where we literally look at every player on the Vikings roster at a given position in that episode, evaluate their season and what might happen to them this offseason, take a look from a relative standpoint at how they performed to their peers on other teams, take a look at the draft at that position and free agents at that position. We're going to go position by position and break that down for you here over the early part of the offseason. We'll have more guests on the Wobcast 2.0 in season 2 as we try and tap into our network and to our network's areas of expertise. So lots of exciting stuff coming up, and we encourage you guys to keep following and keep listening to us weekly as we continue with the Wobcast 2.0 in season 2. Specific to the offseason, guys, a lot of fun stuff to talk about. How about some salary cap maneuvering that we are going to be anticipating, right? Because not every guy with a high cap hit is going to be a casualty, right? You're going to redo their deal. You're going to extend them. You're going to ask for a pay cut. We will talk about the futures of Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith, Adam Thielen, and Zadarius Smith. And we'll be talking about pending free agents for the Vikings, Alexander Madison, Garrett Bradbury, and Irv Smith, chief among them. Giles, Chase, I think we have a new defensive coordinator coming soon. So next week on episode 1 of season 2, we can talk about what the new hire means for the future of the defense. And if they haven't hired one, we can have a short list of people we think they should hire and what that would mean for the defense and lay out a plan for fixing the Vikings defense for 2023. We'll also dig in very deeply on what the Vikings should do in the draft at position 23 and then position 24 thereafter. So lots of really exciting stuff to talk about here in the offseason. I'll open it up to you, Giles, on things you're hoping to hit on and things that excite you about the Wobcast 2.0 in season 2 here in the offseason.
I'm just so excited about the general essence of the Minnesota Vikings because I'm really in love with the head leadership. I think they know what they're doing. I've been pleased with the decisions that they've made. Obviously, we parted ways with our defensive coordinator. You're not going to hit every hire. And I think they'll make a better decision round 2 here. And then when you mix in the core pieces of our team, I'm just so super excited to analyze it. And I think throughout the offseason, we're going to go through each position group week over week and position by position to talk through what is this current state of that particular group. So if we're going to talk about the middle linebacker group, what's working, what's not. Talk about the difference between the best middle linebacker in football and the ones that we have, and what would it take to make us get to number 1. So if you're getting to the wide receiver room, thankfully we are number 1. So obviously you got some cool things to talk about. Really excited to talk about the difference between those things and what it'll take to improve our team, and try to get through some logic reasoning on what it takes to improve each position group. Additionally, I think we'll go through each of the major statistical categories of the NFL and walk through what does it look like to get to number 1. So if we ended the season in 6th in points, what would the Minnesota Vikings have to do in 2024 or 2023 rather to become number 1? What does that look like? How do we become better at scoring points, or how do we become better at yards per rush attempt, and different things like that? So I'm really excited to walk through how do we systematically improve this team if we were the general manager.
Yep, that'll be fun to do. And look, we do that coming from a place of passion and in some senses experience, being that I've been behind the ropes and I've seen the behind the scenes, but we also do it coming from a fanatical or outside standpoint, knowing we are not actually in those seats. We don't have all the information, but we're excited to project what we would do if we were. It's a lot of fun to do, and we know a lot of our listeners operate the same way. So very much looking forward to that, guys, and continuing this fun project, the Wildcast 2.0. It's been fun all season, and it's going to be fun in season 2. Before we go, divisional round is coming up. We are disappointed the Vikings aren't in it, but we're still interested in watching it. So very quickly, 4 games. Let's preview them and predict them. Jaguars at Chiefs. That game is the first one of divisional weekend, 3:30 Central on Saturday. The Chiefs, 9-point favorites at home, over under 52.5. Does the Jaguars' magical season continue, or do the Chiefs assert their dominance and win at home? What do you got?
The logic in me says the Chiefs are going to maintain. But for whatever reason, I can't shake this feeling that the Jaguars are going to upset.
Okay.
I got this feeling. Trevor Lawrence is on a ride, and you got an experienced head coach that has definitely won the Super Bowl, just like Andy Reid. And this hot take, but I think he might even be more aggressive than Andy Reid. There's a shtick to him that really rings true. So I might be predicting a Jaguars upset. That might come back and blow up in my face, but we'll see.
Giles leaning hard Jaguars. Chase.
I think all of America is rooting for Jacksonville right now.
Oh, yeah.
But let's be real. It's January. Patrick Mahomes, Arrowhead. The chess match will be fun between the coaches, but no, I think the Chiefs will win pretty easily.
I'm definitely in between you guys here. I don't think this is a blowout at all. I do think the Chiefs will win. I have an upset pick coming. This is not the game though. So I will side with the Chiefs. And I know that's a high over under at 52.5, but I wouldn't play the under. I know that. So, I'm excited to watch all the games, this one included. I'm picking the Chiefs. I would bet on the Chiefs, but I won't be shocked or floored if it's close and the Jaguars win. Giants at Eagles. At Eagles is the nightcap on Saturday, 7:15 Central on Fox. Eagles at home off a bye, 7.5-point favorites. Over under is 48. I will go first this time. Chase, you go second. Giles, you can close this one out. And call me a prisoner of the moment, but I think the Giants are going to win this game. I don't like how the Eagles looked with Hurts coming back. He didn't look like the same player to me. I was very impressed with the scheme the Giants had on offense. I think they can challenge the Eagles in that way. I think the Eagles will respond better because they have more speed on defense. But I think this is a really close game that comes down to the last possession. And I've got a feeling that Brian Daboll has some special sauce. it's the second or the third time now he's going to get to see the Eagles defense. And I just have so much respect for the way he can scheme on offense. I think he's got a little something going here with Jones and Barkley. And I'm siding with the Giants in a very close game. Chase.
I like what you just said, but I got to be real. Again, playing in Philly in January is not where you want to be. And somehow the Eagles have become a little underrated the last couple of weeks. I'm rolling with the Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts is awesome, but especially behind that O-line. And I think the difference between their defense and our defense is a lot. Yep. So I think the Giants are going to struggle a lot more against that, or against them instead of, versus us. So
okay, break the tie, Giles.
There we go. As much as I understand that the Eagles have a great team, one of the best rosters in the NFL, I truly think they peaked early. That's not necessarily meant to say that they're bad, but they're playing a divisional team, one that they've beaten twice, and it's hard to beat a team 3 times. I mean, let's just be real. It's really hard to do. Yes. And I think Brian Daboll's a better coach. Hot take. I think he's more creative. I think he has more passion than Nick Sirianni. I think the Giants win this game. All right. It's going to be close, but I think the Giants win.
Yeah, I think. Do you agree this is close, Chase, or do you have a blowout here?
And this might just be me hating the Giants.
It, Chase. No, just say
I think it's a blowout. I think it's a blowout.
Okay, that's fine.
I think Eagles win by 13 plus.
Okay. All right. Now, I will say history's on your side, Chase. They had a bye. They're at home. I mean, this is what divisional round teams do. I remember the Vikings had a bye in 2009, and the Cowboys came into the Metrodome, and people were picking the Cowboys. The Vikings just, blew their doors off. And that might be what's going to happen here. And if so, I'll gladly admit that I was wrong. But Giles and I, Giants, Chase, Eagles. Okay, let's go to Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Time, CBS. Bengals at Bills. Bills installed as 5.5-point favorites, over under 49. Bengals at Bills. Chase, you're going first. Who you got?
Well, my hot take here is the winner of this game wins the Super Bowl. Oh, I think these are the 2 best teams left in the playoffs. I don't think it's close. This might be a little biased because I tend to root for the Bengals a little bit, but I think the Bengals are going to win. I think obviously we didn't get to see the first matchup against them due to everything that happened with Damar Hamlin, but before that happened, the Bengals were up and they had possession in the first quarter. So obviously that was in Cincinnati. This one's going to be in Buffalo, but I don't know. I got Cincy.
Okay.
In a very close game.
All right. Giles, you're next.
I think it will be close, but I do think it's going to be the Bills. I think there's national push behind them for a lot of reasons, including Damar Hamlin. I think that'll be extra motivating for that team, although they kind of had some issues in that last game where they gave up some points. I think they're going to come ready to play and play for a lot of those reasons. So I think it'll be close, but the Bills come up ahead.
Okay. We are going to put Giles on an island here because I'm on the Bengals side too. And I don't have a strong opinion on this. I'm not saying I wouldn't bet on it because I'm a degenerate gambler and I'll bet on, anything. So I'm just kidding. Well, I would bet on almost anything, but I think this is a good close game. I mean, you're right, Chase, maybe the 2 best teams left, maybe not, but I mean, certainly heavyweights going at each other here. But I am siding with the Bengals mostly because I don't love Josh Allen's current form, and I am in love with Joe Burrow's current form. And I know more goes into it than just that, but I'm going to take the Bengals in this one, and I don't feel badly about it. I think it's a close game that comes down to the last few minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
All right. The divisional round nightcap is Cowboys at Niners. This one is in San Francisco, and the Niners are 4-point favorites with an over-under of 46.5. I'm on the Niners side on this one. I'm not saying it's a blowout or it's not close, but I think the Cowboys are not frauds, but I think any sense that they have a bunch of momentum right now is fraudulent because they looked horrible in their last regular season game against the Commanders, and they lost, and they wanted to win it. And I think the Bucs were a shell of themselves, and that's not an impressive win to me. Although it was a playoff win, and I get it, but like the Bucs were lame ducks. So the Niners, however, have won 11 in a row, and I think there is an advantage of having 2 extra days, and also an advantage of when they basically knew that they'd be playing the Cowboys, essentially, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, once the Giants beat the Vikings, it's really like 2 extra days of rest and also extra days of prep for the specific team that we're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So Kyle Shanahan's going to have a great plan for Micah Parsons and for that Cowboys defense, which is very good. But I think the Cowboys run will end here and the Niners will win. Giles, you're next.
I think these are probably 2 of the most physical teams in the NFL. When you think of like the physical teams of the entire league, these are probably the top 2. But I think the Niners are going to blow out the Cowboys.
Okay.
I think the Niners are a better team in pretty much every category, including coach. I think he is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and I think McCarthy is not.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they've won plenty of games this year, and they can't give those back. But I think the Niners blow them out.
All right. Close us down, Chase.
I'm also going with the Cowboys, or sorry, with the Niners.
Clean sweep.
Okay. I'm going with the Niners. I saw someone say that the Cowboys can't have 2 good things in a row happen to them, and I kind of agree. I think they're just kind of due for a dud. And it's just, I got the Niners. I think Shanahan's gonna have a really good plan. So,
yep. Very impressed with the Niners. Semi rooting for them, I will say. Although I've never been a Cowboys hater, so it won't hurt my feelings if the Cowboys get out of the NFC. But I'd like one of those 2 teams to get out of the NFC if I had my druthers. In the AFC, to me, it's wide open. Can't wait to see what happens. 4 really good matchups and really good games. Can't wait to watch them, and then can't wait to recap them with you guys next week. I know we're going to talk mostly Vikings defense next week, but it will be fun to break down that divisional round weekend, which is typically, I think, the best weekend of football the NFL has to offer every year is divisional round weekend. You're getting typically the best teams, truly, that were the best teams throughout the course of the season. I think that's the case here this year. So really fun weekend of football ahead. The 3 of us will prep hard for next week, everyone, as we really drill down on the Vikings defense and offer some solutions and a plan of attack to improve that side of the ball for the Minnesota Vikings. So let's close the show here, guys. Episode 18 and season 1 of the Wobcast 2.0 has come to a conclusion. It's been a great ride, and we're very excited for season 2 of the Wobcast 2.0. You can find all episodes in season 1 and all future episodes of the Wobcast 2.0 wherever you find all of your other favorite podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. You can find us on YouTube, and please come find us on our social media channels, including mine @Wobby on Twitter. It's been a pleasure, and it's going to be a pleasure continuing. On behalf of Giles and Chase, this is Wobby signing off for now. Skol Vikings.